Recording is really hard. It's pretty daunting when you don't know anything.
Stuck with the bun.
Hello, I am the Bun, and you are watching Stuck with the Bun. This is a show where we talk about what we're stuck on, what I'm stuck on, what you're stuck on, and hopefully we can get unstuck. In the last episode of Stuck with the Bun, I asked if you guys were interested in seeing a video about a bare minimum recording system. Basic laptop and some software and just basic. Everything basic just so you can get started, but do it to a kind of a high level. I spent about a month putting together two identical systems on both a Mac and a PC, and I wanted to address like ease of installation, ease of configuration, ease of use, really simple user interfaces, but still professional. I've shared a folder, you can find the link to that below, that has this whole session. So you're going to need the software that we're talking about. There's not much, and a lot of people are already going to have some of these things, if not maybe all of them. But I've shared the folder of the session so you can download it, open it up, you can kind of follow along. But I highly suggest like doing your own thing with it. My tones for my guitar, my style of music, it may or may not work for what you're doing. So change everything, explore, learn it, get into it. Just start right now. I recorded a piece of music using this system, and it sounds like this. So excuses, we all make excuses of why we don't get into something, why we don't get started on something. I've done that myself. I was very intimidated getting into audio when I very first got into it. I had the drive though. I had so much interest in it. I just forged through at some point. But the excuses that we hear, the most popular ones surrounding this topic is, I don't have a good enough computer. I need all kinds of expensive hardware and software. And then 3, recording is complex. We already talked about that. It's pretty daunting when you don't know anything. You feel dumb because you don't know what questions to ask or you don't know the language. You just gotta dive into it and take it on. Think of it in stages as opposed to everything at once. For this example, I put together 2 identical systems on a 2011 MacBook Pro and a 2009 HP AMD PC. By today's standards, both of these machines are old. The PC is really old. It's 10 years old. It works really well. A little bit more on the specs of the machines. The MacBook Pro is a 2.4 gigahertz i7 with 8 gigs of RAM. Sounds impressive, but it's old tech. Very old tech. I don't know, it works fine for audio. And the MacBook Pro used was $350 US. The PC, it was $300 back in 2009. So by today's standards, that's free. You don't need a crazy machine. That's the point here. Pretty simple machines work well for the system we put together because we put together a system that is light. It's fast. It's a fast system. It doesn't require insane computing. Second excuse, number 2, I need all of this really expensive software and really expensive hardware. Also not true. We live in an amazing time for technology. We're going to kick it off with the interface. You need to get the guitar into the computer. These demos were done with a PreSonus 22 VSL USB interface, 2-channel interface, and a Focusrite 2i2 interface. My clip was done with PreSonus, and Artie's clip was done with the Focusrite. Artie's clip is coming up a little bit later to give you an idea of what somebody else did with this exact same system. You can get both of those interfaces for under $200, I think new right now. And I think a lot of you already probably have these interfaces. The PreSonus and Focusrite stuff is very popular. If you have a different brand, that's okay. I'm focusing on those because that's what we used, but also because the Focusrite and PreSonus stuff, it tends to just work really well. You kind of plug it in, it just works. With PCs, you will have to get drivers generally. Sometimes with Macs, a lot of times are just plug and play. They just kind of work. Interface. You're going to need an interface. about $200 or less. Second on the list is listening. We got to listen through something. We need speakers. I use near field monitors, but for this, I got some headphones, the Audio-Technica ATH M30X headphones, and I did some research before I got into them, and I went and tested a whole bunch out at the store. I got them at Long & McQuaid here in Canada. They were really impressive. They're like $70 US, and they sound really good. People will tell you not to mix and master with headphones. That's not what this is about. This is about getting started and rocking out and learning stuff. These headphones actually sound pretty good, and you can get a pretty decent thing going just with these headphones. There are cheaper monitors out there, but it might not be the thing to buy just yet if you're not familiar and not fully committed to doing this. Headphone link down below in the description. You can upgrade later, get started now. So that's hardware. You know, you need an interface and something to listen with. Next thing is software. So software, we're going to start with a DAW, and it's probably no surprise. I'm going to recommend the Reaper DAW. It's really light. It's like 14 megs or something like that. It doesn't have a pile of encryption built into it. And some of the other reasons I chose Reaper, not only because it runs on old hardware really well, it's really light, and it's very affordable, but it's also a super pro DAW. If you already have a DAW, you can use that, but it's not going to work if you want to download this session. Reaper DAW is what we're focusing on here, and it runs really well on older hardware, and it's really inexpensive. And the trial is like 100% unlimited. The trial is incredible. So you can be sure about it before you buy it. I have like 4 or 5 licenses on a whole bunch of machines, you know. So I support Reaper because I really believe in what they're doing. I believe in them because they seem to believe in us. So yeah, get into it. But if you have something else, you can use that. Next thing is drums. We need some drum software. Probably no surprise here. I went with Easy Drummer 2, and the big reason is because it is very easy to install and configure. They have a download manager for Easy Drummer for all TuneTrack things, and the download manager manages not only the download but the installation, and it takes care of everything for you. You don't have to, like, I tried some other things like Get Good Drums. Sounds incredible, but the configuration, if you're just beginning, the configuration is insane. I really believe in what they're doing. I think they're doing a great thing, but I don't think it's the thing to start with, unless you're already like a computer maniac. If you want easy installation and just get going right away, and it sounds good, and we're using the stock kit, there's no additional kits, it's just the stock kit that comes with Easy Drummer 2, and it sounds pretty good. It configures really well, and it runs light, runs really well on old hardware. So you don't have to worry about your computer choking up. It goes for about $170, $179 US. Some people will say that's expensive, but I'm like, expensive compared to what? If you love music and you're just like, this is what I want to do, that's not a lot of money. That's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do, but it's something to think about. Easy Drummer 2, link below in the description. Runs really light, installs really well. User interface is very friendly. Amps and effects. Amps and effects, very important. There's a lot to choose from right now, and a lot of it sounds really good. Same idea. Easy to install, easy to configure, easy to use. That's what I focused on. And also very light on the hardware. So it will run on your computer, even if you have a crappy computer. I went with Bias Effects 2 Professional. The reason why I went with that is because it's going to give us all the tools we need. I didn't go with light, and there's other software that is maybe a little bit cheaper. This, I think, was like $99 recently. It's $199 regularly. $199 is not expensive when you're getting like tons of great sounding amps, tons of great sounding effects, and also addresses bass amps, and the bass amp sounds are quite good now. They weren't very good before, but they're quite good now. We're using that for those reasons. It's going to run on your machine because it's very light. It runs on phones. I highly recommend Professional because we want to focus on creating. We don't want to focus on the inability to create because we don't have the right things. Guitar amps, bass amps, effects. They all sound quite good. So that takes us to the third thing, which is complexity of recording. Recording is really hard. I hear that all the time. We talked about this a little bit already. I was also under that impression early on. I'm going to do 5 small videos about all these things in the weeks to come. I'm going to probably put them on Facebook and then put them all together in one YouTube video a little later on. I'm going to break it down into like 5 sort of areas. The first area is the audio interface and the DAW configuration. That's the very first thing you're going to have to tackle, but you only have to really do it the first time. But we want to make sure that we have the drivers for the interface. If it needs drivers, if you're on PC, you're probably going to need drivers. And then in the DAW itself, in Reaper, you go to Preferences, and you go to Device. We're going to set the device input and output. And we're also going to set the buffer. The buffer is very important because when we play guitar through the computer, we want to hear it in real time. We don't want it delayed. The very highest you can set the buffer is about 512. I tend to run my buffer at 128. It might depend on your system, but 512 works. 128 is ideal because there is absolutely guaranteed no delay, and it feels lifelike. So that's number 1. In terms of recording is hard, well, you need to figure that part out first. Number 2 is signal flow and gain staging. We need to figure out what the input level is. So the preamp on the interface, we need to set that so it doesn't peak. And there's going to be a meter on the interface itself. Don't look at the meters in the DAW. The meter on the interface is going to tell you if it's peaking. If it's peaking, back it off. Never let the light up. If it's a Focusrite interface, like what Artie used, it lights green and it goes red if it peaks. If it goes red, back it off. Make sure it doesn't peak on the interface because it sounds terrible. It's the worst thing ever. In the DAW, then you will set your level accordingly. So that's number 2, signal flow and gain staging. Number 3, DAW modules. What I'm talking about here is when you're looking at the DAW, we have the record and edit window where all the tracks are. Then we have the mixer and the master fader. And that's all the levels and pan adjustment and the master output. So all of those channels go to the master output and that's your final master output. And then within that mixer, you also have inserts and sends. The snare reverb that I'm using, that's an example of a send, a parallel effects send. So I send the snare signal to another channel and I put a reverb on that channel so the reverb is not on the original snare. And I bring the reverb up by itself behind the snare. And that's a very common move. So inserts are where our amp effects are and our compressors and EQs and all that kind of stuff. So you're going to have to know about that. MIDI is important for what we're doing. And also getting to know what MIDI is. MIDI is an event. We make a MIDI event, and the MIDI event triggers a sample in EZdrummer. Could be a snare, kick, whatever. MIDI is not audio. Musical Instrument Digital Interface is what it stands for, but it triggers samples. It triggers something. You can use MIDI for a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm running out of light here. I made a video about editing drums, composing and editing drums. It's a 2-part video. Link to that below. I play drums. I can compose my own drums. If you can't, there are MIDI packs and you can download the MIDI packs, and some of them come in EZdrummer to begin with, but you can download the MIDI packs and cut them and use fills and beats and all these kinds of things to compose your own music until you get comfortable with composing your own beats. Number 5, timeline and grid workflow. We need to figure out how the timeline actually works and how the grid is subdivided, and then how to apply a click, a time signature, and a tempo. And I cover those things as well in my drum videos. You can check those out. That's it. That's the 5 things. Yeah. Audio interface and DAW, signal flow and gain staging, modules of the DAW modules, MIDI basics, and timeline and grid workflow. You need to know those 5 things, and I would kind of go at them in that order. So I'm going to sign out here. Cheers. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps you. I want to hear your tracks. Go to Baritone Obsessed and share any tracks that you make if you use this system. Really share any tracks that you make at all. If you're tuning low and you're making sick riffs, I want to hear them. Share them at baritoneobsessed.com. This is what Artie made, and I think it sounds pretty damn good.